जस्तैमा हो ऋतु फेरि फेरि दिन रात अस्कै पर्छ मौसम फेरि फेरि जब जब चुनौती हुन्छ त्यहाँबाट सिर्जनाको एउटा अवसर हुन्छ त्यहाँनिर त्यो अवसर खोज्न सक्यो भने जिन्दगी I only go back to the late 60s when I was actually a student at the university, when Alan Devis of Edinburgh University came to head the Central Department of English under an agreement signed by the university with the British Council. When he came in the year 1968, I guess, we were living out. He didn't teach me. He taught me later at Edinburgh University, but then in Kirtipur, he didn't teach me. He was invited here to radically change the English teaching syllabus, which was entirely literature oriented. It was said, this is a very conservative syllabus. The components of the syllabus were only Shakespeare's plays, romantic poetry, Charles Dickens novels, and so on. How can people learn literature from this? But people use these literary words to learn English anyway. I remember one very funny episode I just want to share with you, because Ramji is there. It's an episode in Dhara. I had a friend who spoke Shakespeare in English all the time. He tried his best to speak Shakespeare in English. And one day when I was parting with him, saying goodbye, he said, Abhi, adieu, adieu, he said. Because adieu is the farewell, word of farewell that Hamlet says to his father, dead father. And I said, rest, disturbed soul, rest, I said, in the manner. And then he became very angry with me. Because why did you call me a ghost? And I said, because you are using the ghost language. You are not saying goodbye, but you are saying adieu. Because there were no other alternatives to learn English. So English was dominated by the English literature as such per se. Except for a few works of American writers, most of the components in every unit were English literature of different periods, from Shakespeare down to the present, up to T.S. Eliot actually. And then when Alan Davis came in 1968-69, he directly handled this syllabus. He wanted to make it split it between literature-oriented and language-oriented syllabus. And what he did was, he created what they call the special English, which was literature-oriented. People who wanted to aspire to do MA in English literature, they opted. It was a requirement. They had to opt it. And those who only wanted to learn English opted for the general English. General English was compulsory for both. And this was a very important transformation, big change. When Alan Davis visited the country, if Jairaj sir, Avasthi sir is somewhere here, he will remember he accompanied him. Jairaj Avasthi sir can say, with bearded person there, he's sitting, I can see him. He can tell you more about this experience of his work with Alan Davis. And that was a very important period. He will tell you sometime. Very important period, because Alan Davis introduced the syllabus. Later in Britain, he was asking me, did you change the syllabus again? I said, no. And he said, I had changed the syllabus thinking that people in the day will change the syllabus and they would make it a dynamic process. Have they kept the syllabus the same throughout? I said, no, we have not changed very much that syllabus. But Alan Davis, when he came here, he had a certain confusion also. The confusion was, he thought probably by bringing Noam Chomsky, who was a hit hero at that time, he could probably radically change the English syllabus. So he organized a one-month-long course at Tripureshwar. The course material that he gave in this bound volumes, lithographed paper, was the tree system, introducing Chomsky's tree system, the basic linguistic system of Chomsky. So we studied the tree system, and that was, I didn't, Father Miller at that time was saying to me, Abhi, how can we going to improve our English by learning that, and at the end of this syllabus, Alan Davis thought probably he had completely radically changed the literature-oriented teacher's English, improved the English. And he asked one very famous teacher, all of us know, I don't want to name him, to speak on the occasion about the last speech, about talking about the achievements of the syllabus. And the professors came up and he said, in his very typical pronunciation style, he said, we have benefited very much by this 1 month long course given by Alan Davis. This course has improved our language, he said. So he didn't even say language, he said language. And Alan Davis said, oh my God, I thought I had improved the English of English teachers. And that was his illusion. Alan Davis later in Edinburgh often recalled this incident. And that was his mistake, because because Noam Chomsky was not a friend of the English teachers. He was a linguist, a generative grammarian, who had at least one contribution, is that he said linguists is limited number of sentences, limited number of rules and unlimited number of sentences. That is how he freed language teaching, language studies from the clutch of the behaviorist school. That was his contribution. Other than that, there was very little he could do in this regard. So then what happened was, after the literature-oriented and language-oriented syllabuses were streamed, were divided in two streams. It was, as in literary theory, you have been teaching your students, it was an imbrication actually. They moved parallel, not even parallel, they were imbricated. At the literary theorists would call that imbrication. Literature and language-oriented syllabus were imbricated. That means they together constituted the texture, the very fabric of the language teaching in Nepal. That was the imbrication. And they never parted company, they remained the same throughout. And each pursued their courses independently. Those who opted for the language-oriented syllabuses, they went into the realm, the world of ELT methodology. We come to the ELT domain after that. And those who opted for the literature-oriented courses, they did some important work, like they introduced some more texts than those were prescribed earlier. That is one achievement. They included some works from American writers as well. Very few from Australian writers, I don't remember. And their progress was a little slow for that matter. But the language teaching oriented syllabus walas, they made tremendous movement. The movement was, one was the orientation movement. Orientation movement means Alan Davis himself and his team, Jairaj sir can tell you more, they introduced the structuralist methodologist Robert Lado. Robert Lado's method they introduced at Tripureshwar itself, which is a structural method, which is a kind of a behaviorist method. And from there they move on, and then syllabus. And this process of going to Britain, and very few in America for training, continued after that. And so many people went to Britain especially, some in Australia, I remember, and some later in America. America, people started for ELT, started going a little late. And most of them were trained in Britain. They went to Britain for orientation. And then these ELT orientations were considered as the very important achievements. They were very important achievements they were considered. Everywhere they went, everywhere they pursued this syllabus, they thought they were trying to shake the ghost of literature from the English language teaching, which was a mistake actually. Because English, they could have productively used the literature component, literature as well for teaching English, but they didn't. It was a kind of a segregation two castes, literature caste and language caste. And then when I went to Britain, that was in late 70s, and then people were talking about the notional syllabus at that time. Robert Lado and his team had become old-fashioned already, and they were talking about the notional, Wilkins notional syllabus. They recognized that the components, especially the sentences, have this notional perception. You can teach the students the notions from them. The semantic, John Lyon's semantic theory was also utilized for that, and so on, notional syllabus. And while I was still there, Manvi's communicative language syllabus, a book, famous book came out, and that became a big kranti, a revolution in English language teaching. Communicative English language teaching became the latest mantra of English language teaching, and the ELT wala said, now that we have entered the communicative phase, the days of the literature teachers are gone. The numbered, they said. The days are numbered, and that is the kind of a pride. I am a party in this matter. And then when I was a student at Edinburgh University, a very important junction occurred at that time. The junction was between literature and language, because Noam Chomsky's linguistics was used to study literature, which sounds still very bizarre. The bizarre in the sense that E. Cummings's poems were interpreted by using Noam Chomsky's linguistics. And they used one word, the deviation was the word. They called all the poems deviation. Language, what poems did Amar recited, I could not hear, but poems, any poem that was used into the classroom, the teachers were using the deviation, because that's not the normal language used in the class. And that was a kind of very important turning point. And what they did was they achieved a kind of a meeting point of the two schools. Literature, they realized, was a dominant factor. Literature was not going to go away. It was there for good. And linguistics method was there to stay too, because that was productive. It had become very successful in many places. And they struck a kind of a compromise. And that compromise was called stylistics. Students, I was quite unwilling to only become an ELT person. I still am not. But I promoted the syllabus, made the syllabus, like the department, Amar is here, Jayaraja Avasthi sir has made so many syllabuses, ELT syllabuses. I too did, as a chairman of the syllabus. But my heart was not always with the kind of a only ELT method, very artificial kind of a very, what they call banavati methods. But still, some of them are very productive, very fine, very good. They have become successful, and they struck a deal, and the name of the deal was called Stylistics. My guru, Kamal Prakash Malla, had just returned after writing a thesis on stylistics at Edinburgh University. At the table of the library, what they call a small room, which they call the carrel. My guru's thesis I placed on my desk. I borrowed it from the library, and it was a huge desk, huge stylistics. That was considered as a big mantra. So that was at the time when literature and ELT met. But then the shift did not stop there. ELT became more and more independent. TESOL came up. English as a second language came up. And so many organizations sprang up, developed all over the world. But the most powerful organization developed in Nepal. Jaira sir is somewhere sitting there at the back. The NELTA that we are talking about, meeting here in this virtual seminar, the NELTA came into existence. The NELTA formalized it, not only formalized the ELT process, but gave it a leadership, gave it a shape, gave it an organization, which we can see today, even in these difficult times, undeterred by the coronavirus. another situation, we are kind of using the best method, the virtual method, to carry on with that. So this is the strength of the English language teaching in Nepal, which finally the ELT, through different developments, by adopting different methods, then become an institution, which in different NELTA seminars, people who are participating, I've heard praising this NELTA as one of the most unique organizations in the whole of South Asia, probably in many parts of the world. We should not be too flattered by all this, because if we become too flattered, we might stop working. But the achievements are admired by the participants and so on.